Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about compatibility issues and why some people feel that it's very tricky to upgrade things. So let's get into it. So I had a question, and the question in question was, Frederick, why is it so hard for companies to build by default just build in compatibility into different software? Because throughout my career, many times I've heard different companies warn people from upgrading from one version of a piece of software to another version. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So this, I suppose, is a fair question. I think it's a little bit of it's definitely an education piece to answer this question, but I also think that it's when I hope that I can make my point clear on this and why I feel that this is a very unfair thing to ask of people. It's very similar to a few politicians have suggested that IT companies should be held accountable for any bugs or issues that their software might actually cause, and how ludicrously idiotic this idea is in my world. And the reason why it's this idea that, why we can't just make things compatible from the beginning, why that's not possible, is very simple. It is because we don't know what the future will look like. I know that most programmers think that we're pretty smart, and most people that are not programmers think that we're pretty smart. But yeah, we don't know the future. I'm sorry to say. We have absolutely fuck all understanding of what's going to happen even tomorrow. We can hope that it's going to look the way that it looked yesterday, but we don't know. And you see, the issue with that is that when you're working and you're actually doing the thing that people want you to do today, they start changing their minds at some point. At some point, someone comes along and says, hey, we're going to go in a new direction, or we need this very quickly, or we need this and that, and so forth. And all you can do as the sorry little programmer is to inform. Usually you get some word in there, and then after a little while you build this thing, and someone comes along and says the next thing and says, hey, you know what, we need to do this now, and now we need to do this and that, and so forth and so forth and so forth. And this is the big problem with software development, and that is why it is all but impossible to make something completely compatible forever. Now, the reason why it's almost impossible to make something compatible is because even if we say that we're going to make something backwards compatible, that is only possible to a certain extent. You might find yourself in situations where it's almost impossible to make a to actually continue forward with new upgrades to a system without making any type of breaking change backwards, or something that causes a disruption in somebody's workflow if they're depending on in theory, all the things that you have created. An example would be if you have a system, let's say that you have a platform for handling salaries, just let's call it that. And you develop this system and it goes really well, and you have all these people who just click in different boxes, and then you have some nice features that maybe does automatic email dispatching, and then someone comes along and says, hey, you know what would be really cool? We should also have this, it should just send out the PDF, or like the document that actually shows people's like what they made this quarter or this month or something like that, right? And you develop this feature, it's extremely loved and it's very nice and so forth. And then all of a sudden, there's a law that comes along and says, hey, you know what? You're not allowed to do that. And you as the software developer and the company goes, okay, why? Well, because it's a law now. It's a law that you can't just send a secret or very sensitive document like that over mail. So you're gonna have to do something else. This is actually a true story. And so what you're gonna have to do is that you're gonna have to change that from sending, you can't just send the document directly. You can have it on your platform if somebody needs to validate them through some online signature system, and you can send a link instead. Okay, so now the company, the software company, we basically are in the situation, that sucks, because if it's been working this way. Like, it's a bad user experience, but it's also not just about the user experience. This is where we're coming in with this idea, this exact idea. All right, if we change this now, maybe there's tons of these different customers that we have that depend on that PDF being sent out to the mail system, because if they have a system like that, it might be the case that they actually have their own systems built on the assumption that this is going to work this exact way. But this time, like, we're in a deadlock. If we want this company to continue and not be shut down by the government, we have no choice. What are we going to do? So what we do is that we make an announcement and we say, hey, we're going to do this update here to this system, and by this and then, because we need to be a little bit ahead of the curve here. We can't just release it the same day the law goes into circulation, right? And then everybody complains, of course, and everybody's angry at us and like, why do you have to change this, so forth and so forth. And we try to explain that, well, yeah, we need to, like, the software is moving in this direction, we need to make these changes, and I'm sorry, but we don't really have much of a choice. All we can do is that we can offer you you can stay on the old version for a little while, until such a time where you actually need to do the rollover and start and upgrade things. So you just have to upgrade the thing as well. And this is the problem, that the software always changes. It keeps on changing. You're not shipping a unit of something that then can be extended, that can then be recreated in a new unit of something with these new features that you want and build, and you can't rebuild the thing from scratch. Because in software development, what you do is that you build the thing once and then you support it for absolutely ever. And that thing changes. It changes over and over. And because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, there's no way for you to account for every possible thing that could create a situation where someone can't upgrade, or someone can't do this, or someone can't do that. It's completely unfeasible to have this idea that a software company knows the future is absolutely ridiculous. Do you think that Google and Facebook, they have tons of failures? They have tons of projects that just fall through and doesn't become something useful. Some projects they have are really good and some are really shitty. This is the nature of innovation. This is what R&D is about, because that is what software is. It is R&D. You are discovering and building things that have never been built in that exact way with those circumstances ever before. And that means that you're going to have to make some assumptions based on what the world looks like today. So what I want you to take away from this is that to ask that question, why it's so hard for companies to foresee compatibility issues or things that might cause issues with upgrades and so forth for future companies or future customers, to ask us to foresee that, it is like literally to ask a politician or an economist or someone who works in finance to foresee the next quarter. That is literally what you're asking. You're literally asking somebody to foresee the future. Because if we are forced to try to do this sort of thing, it is all but impossible for us to ship something today, because we can't really make any reasonable assumptions about the state of the world, because it's almost impossible to think about all the things that could happen in the future that could cause someone to have to upgrade to a new version of a system. We do try our best as software developers to make non-breaking changes and not force this sort of behavior, but sometimes it's just not possible, such as when in this scenario that I explained with the law. That's one such scenario where we don't have a choice. This is going to happen, and all we can do is to make that process as painless as possible. And trust me when I say this, we try to do that for everybody involved. Have a great day.